Hi everyone, my name is Nashit and welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be talking about Linux operating system and basics of shell scripting. So if you haven't watched our previous videos on DevOps, so just to let you know that we are doing a complete free DevOps course. It will be a 40 to 45 days of DevOps course where we'll be talking about most of the DevOps things. And our aim with this DevOps course is to make a person with zero DevOps knowledge hero in DevOps. So if you haven't watched those videos, there is a playlist on my channel called DevOps Zero to Hero. I would highly recommend you to watch the previous videos before jumping onto this video. Perfect. So if you move to the agenda for the day, that is Linux operating system and the basics of shell scripting. Firstly, what is your operating system, right? Before you understand the concept of Linux operating system, you should know the basics of operating system or what is an operating system. So just try to understand with a practical example. Let's say you have a laptop or you purchased a Raspberry Pi or any other server, okay? So what are the key components of any server, right? The key components is that you are purchasing hardware. I understand you get a lot of fancy things like your display, you get other things, mouse, keyboard and all the other things that you are purchasing, but essentially you are purchasing hardware. That is nothing but your CPU, RAM and IO, right? Or hard disk. So you're purchasing these things, and what you do once you purchase the hardware is you try to use some softwares on top of your hardware. Okay, let's say you purchased a Dell laptop. What would be your interest? Your interest is to make use of some softwares, whether you are using this for gaming, okay, or let's say you are a DevOps engineer, so you must be using some applications like Jenkins, or you must be using some office related stuff, or as a student you might want to learn something like Java or Python. So you are essentially running some softwares, right? This is what you are doing. So you have a software application that you want to run against the hardware that you purchased, okay? But you can directly not do it. Let's say as a user you installed Jenkins and you want to execute your Jenkins pipeline. Your Jenkins can directly not, it cannot directly talk to you CPU or RAM or IO. There has to be a medium between your software and hardware. That is nothing but your operating system. Okay, so what is an operating system? Operating system is something that acts as a bridge between your software and hardware. So it drives as a medium for the communication between your software and hardware. That is the definition of your operating system. Okay, so whether it is a Linux operating system, whether it is a Windows operating system or anything. So today when you purchase your laptop, let's say you purchased a Dell laptop. Okay, so what Dell does is it sells you the hardware. Okay, and on top of the hardware, what is it doing? It is installing a operating system and it is giving it to you. So you purchase the Dell laptop, which comes with the CPU, RAM, IO, and along with that, what Dell is doing is it is installing Windows operating system. Okay, so that is the reason why you are able to directly deploy or install any application, and your application is able to process the requests that are coming from the user. That is you. So as a user, what you are trying to do is you're installing an application and your application is talking to your operating system and your operating system is talking to your hardware and vice versa, right? Your hardware is again talking to your operating system gives back the information to your application and your application gives back the information to you. So this is the process. So the communication happens in this way. Firstly, as a user, you are installing some application on your laptop and your laptop or your server. Okay, just for your easy understanding, I'm mentioning it as a laptop, but always understand it as a server. So as a user, you installed application or software on your server and your server is giving the response or giving the request to your operating system and your operating system is sending the request to your hardware for CPU usage or RAM usage or anything. Again, your operating system is giving the response back to your hardware is giving the response back to your operating system. From operating system, it goes to your software or your application and finally it reaches the user. So this is the life cycle. And this is where your operating system plays the key role. You must have your applications ready, you must have your hardware ready, but without operating system, nothing happens. So that's why it's a core, it's a heart of everything. Again, depending upon your comfort, whether you're using a Apple, like let's say that you purchased a Apple laptop or your Mac laptop, so it comes with your Mac operating system. You purchase the Dell laptop, by default most of the times it comes with a Windows operating system. You're purchasing ThinkPad or something, the Linux version of it, so it comes with the Linux operating system. So depending upon the user or depending upon the vendor, they come with their own operating systems. But why Linux is very popular? If you just think for a minute, as a student or as a kid, most of the times you are familiar with Windows operating system. But once you move to your software journey, you see that Linux is used everywhere. Whether in your production system, staging, developer environments, everything is deployed, all the applications are deployed and tested on Linux operating system. I agree that there are Windows as well, but 80 to 90% of the times you test on Linux operating system and you also deploy on Linux operating system. Let's try to understand why. Okay, so there are very good reasons why Linux is popular. Firstly, first and foremost reason is Linux is a free operating system. Okay, unlike Windows, Windows is a proprietary operating system. You must know that it's a proprietary operating system provided by Microsoft, whereas Linux is a freeware or it's a open source software. So today, anybody can create Unix-like operating systems, that is Linux-like operating systems. And again, one of the key reasons is Linux is very secure. For example, you have a Linux laptop and you have a Windows laptop. You don't even have to install any kind of antiviruses on Windows. You must have installed McAfee or any other things like antivirus softwares, right? Anti-malware softwares. But whereas in Linux, you don't have to install any kind of antivirus. It is by default very, very secure. I'm not saying that it is 100% secure, but most of the times your Linux operating system is a secure software. And it contains a lot of distributions. Like, today you have many distributions like CentOS, you have distributions like Ubuntu, you have distributions like Red Hat, and lot of other things, right? But if you talk about the free distributions, you have popular ones like Ubuntu, CentOS, people also use Alpine, Debian. So different kinds of distributions are provided. So you can, depending upon your comfort, you can use any distributions. And finally, one of the most important things for any application to run on your production systems is it has to be very fast. If your operating system is slow, because your operating system is heart of everything. Like whenever a user is trying to send a request, let's say you are trying to access Amazon.com, you are trying to access Netflix. So if your operating system itself is slow, then it doesn't matter, right? Whether your application, you might have used advanced concept like multi-threading or any other things in your application. But if your operating system is not capable of taking this request, then it's of no use. So that's why people always prefer fast running operating systems, or the operating systems which are not crashed or which are not slow in their production systems. So that's why people use Linux operating system over Windows. Okay, so if somebody asks you what is the difference between Linux and Windows, so this is something that you answer, or why Linux is used. Linux is most widely used when compared to other operating systems. These are some of the reasons. Now, let's try to take a couple of minutes to understand the architecture of it. Okay, so I will not bore you, or I will not go into the details of the Linux operating system architecture because it's very complicated and it's not even for me to explain the entire Linux operating system. Even if I take 1 hour or 2 hours, it's not easy to understand or easy to explain. So that's why what I'll do is I'll try to keep it as crisp as possible or as simple as possible. So let's say this is your operating system, OS. So firstly, the heart of your Linux operating system is your kernel, okay? And on top of your kernel, you have something called as your system libraries. Don't worry, I'll explain them in detail. And on top of it, you have some of the things like you have your compilers, you have your user processes, and some system related softwares. Even for your Windows, you have some system related softwares, right? So similarly, even for Linux, you have some system related softwares. So whenever you are installing Linux, let's say you install Linux in your laptop. So these are the things that you are installing, okay? Because these are the fundamentals of any operating system. So firstly, you need to understand what is a kernel. Kernel is heart of your Linux operating system. Why? Because the responsibility of kernel is to establish a communication between your hardware and software. Like I mentioned, there is a user, okay? The user is installing an application which is a software, and then there is a hardware that is nothing but your CPU, RAM, IO. Operating system is responsible for basically cascading your requests, that is from software to hardware. So who takes the responsibility? Like there should be a component in your operating system which is taking this responsibility, right? So that component is nothing but your kernel. So that's why kernel is again here heart of your operating system. So there are some primary responsibilities of kernel that you have to understand. That is, for CPU, it does, okay, let's try to put it in this way. There are 4 important aspects of your kernel. Even if somebody is asking in an interview what is a kernel in an operating system, you can just say that kernel has 4 primary responsibilities. It's a heart of any operating system which does device management, okay? Kernel is responsible for memory management, then it is responsible for your process management, and finally, it is responsible for handling your system calls. Okay, for any operating system, these are the key aspects and that are handled by your kernel. One is device management, memory management, process management, and handling the system related calls. After that, you have system libraries, right? Like I mentioned, you can also take example of kernel modules and other things. But okay, after that, you have the final stage where you have compilers, user processes, and some kind of system softwares. Even if you are using a Windows laptop, you are aware of your system softwares that you have, right? So similarly, even for Linux, you have some system related softwares. So whenever you are installing Linux, let's say you install Linux on your laptop, so these are the things that you are installing, okay? Because these are the fundamentals of your operating system. So firstly, you need to understand what is a kernel. Kernel is heart of your Linux operating system. Why? Because the responsibility of kernel is to establish a communication between your hardware and software. Like I mentioned, there is a user, okay? The